His Excellency Mr. Makhdoom Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are in Copenhagen to conclude a fair and ambitious agreement to combat climate change. We do this because the viability of our planet, the prosperity of our future generations, and indeed the survival of the human race depends on how effectively we are able to respond to the threats posed by climate change. The presence of so many world leaders in Copenhagen is a clear manifestation of this realization. It will be truly unfortunate for such a big gathering of the world leaders to leave Copenhagen without an agreement. This is certainly not what the world expects of us. The deadlock in climate change talks, after the long-standing impasse in Doha trade negotiations, is a clear sign of growing trust deficit between the developed and the developing world. We must avail of this opportunity to explore means to bridge the growing divide at a time when we need closer international cooperation to combat global challenges. Let Copenhagen be the starting point of this effort. Mr. President, climate change poses an existential threat for us. Securing a fair and equitable agreement on climate change within the framework of existing instruments remains a priority for Pakistan. On per capita basis, our emissions are very modest, roughly 1/3 of the world average. Pakistan is ranked at 135th in the list of emitters. Yet, Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries exposed to the adverse impacts of climate change. The IPCC Fourth Assessment Report and a number of other studies point out that Pakistan will bear the brunt of climate change in multiple ways. Mr. President, in Pakistan, we are grappling with many serious problems, including adverse impacts of the financial, energy, and food crises on our economy. This is on top of the challenges we confront in fighting extremism and terrorism. We have lost precious lives and infrastructure in our war against extremism. The conservative economic cost of this war for Pakistan comes to over $35 billion since 2001-2002. Despite these threats and challenges, we have taken a number of steps to address the challenge of climate change. We are paying special attention to low-carbon energy generation initiatives, including hydro, nuclear, wind, and solar energy. We have, in fact, been able to reduce our CO2 emissions by 1 million tons per annum by switching to natural gas as replacement of gasoline. Mr. President, the energy needs in Pakistan, in particular, are increasing exponentially. We place major emphasis on environmentally friendly sources of power generation, including hydro, nuclear, and clean coal technologies in our energy mix. We intend to add 8,800 megawatts of nuclear energy by 2025. We are determined to remain on the low carbon trajectory. However, our resources and capacity to adapt remains very limited. We seek international support and assistance to urgently develop and implement nationally appropriate low carbon emission strategies. Mr. President, Copenhagen must deliver at least a framework to continue our work in the lead up to Mexico. All of us will have to contribute by focusing on the following key elements as the basis for a successful outcome. A, engage under the Kyoto Protocol to reach a multilateral agreement on the level of emissions reduction by developed country parties, commensurate with their historical responsibilities. Pakistan supports a target of at least 40% cut by 2020 and more than 85% by 2015, with the baseline of 1990. B, agree on the provision and establishment of new institutional arrangements on finance and technology transfer, both for emission reduction efforts and adaptation to all developing countries, to enable them to fairly contribute to the global efforts to reduce greenhouse gases. C, strengthen the existing adaptation fund with additional funds both from market and public sector sources. D, design the climate vulnerability criterion of countries on a scientific basis. E, avoid trade protectionism in the name of combating climate change. Mr. President, we all need to work together to save the planet for our future generations. Pakistan, for its part, is ready to make its contribution. I thank you, Mr. President.